Hello and welcome back to the Ask Me About DT podcast. My name is Nadia Mills and I am a physical therapist. I specialize in pelvic floor health and lymphedema management. And today's episode was inspired by a beautiful conversation I had this week. I was out at a health fair and two very brave men came up to my table to talk about physical therapy. And in the conversation, I always generally ask a question about back pain because that's usually my gateway diagnosis into discussing pelvic floor health. Both of them were very intrigued, and actually I'm very glad I got the opportunity to talk to them about pelvic floor health because it seemed like the problems that they were experiencing were definitely linked to pelvic floor dysfunction. That conversation really prompted me I have a lot of content about women's stuff. My passion really, is everybody, but I really want to get more information out there to men because they are truly underserved. Women are underserved in this area, but males are truly underserved because, again, there's so much that people are not aware of when it comes to pelvic floor dysfunction. And the big myth is that it's about women mostly, but not everybody has a pelvis. Everybody has a pelvic floor. And pelvic floor dysfunction can happen at any stage in life, from toddler to senior citizen. All of us need to know more about our pelvis and our pelvic health so that we can live a really good quality of life. So today's topic is what pelvic floor dysfunction can look like in men. And so, like I said, the first myth that we have to bust is that pelvic floor dysfunction is about incontinence. If we're talking incontinence, also the myth is that it's about older people. And then when we're talking about men, the myth is that it's about old, frail, and out of shape people. So I'm going to start off with this. A recent study published in the Journal of Science, Medicine, and Sports in April 2021. The title of the study is Prevalence of Urinary Incontinence Among Elite Athletes of Both Sexes. The study group was elite athletes. We're talking like world-class, high-class athletes, not your everyday Joe like you and I. And what that study found was in 33% of athletes, and the average age of this athletic group was 27.75. So roughly about 24 years old. So 33% of athletes, elite athletes around the age of 24 years, were having trouble with urinary incontinence. And now, there's of course a huge disparity. The prevalence was 45% in females compared to 14.7% in male athletes. Now, still, the 45% in females, that has a lot to do with our anatomy and structure. And that is why a lot of times people think pelvic floor dysfunction is only in females. But 14.7% in males, that is a pretty high number. And again, we're talking about athletes. We're not talking about you and I. We're talking about elite athletes. And so if they can find 14.7% of young 24-year-old athletes having incontinence or some pelvic floor dysfunction, what about you and I, just the average Joe? Pelvic floor dysfunction is very commonly seen in activities like CrossFit. Yes, y'all, CrossFit, hundreds of whatever. CrossFit is a big one. I'm not bashing CrossFit, but what I'm trying to say is that people who are in really challenging environments, people who are very strong, people who have really high endurance, sometimes they also don't have very good core control or body mechanics. And that's what leads to pelvic floor dysfunction. So along the lines of that, so we have pelvic floor dysfunction showing up in activities like CrossFit, weightlifting, basketball, running, and cycling. And for the cycling, it's not so much the same symptoms. It's more nerve pain and sometimes muscle and joint pain because of the posture from cycling and also the pressure from the seat. But what I'm trying to say is this myth about pelvic floor dysfunction being issues with older people or people who are not out of shape, it's not true. It's really each and every one of us. So, okay, Nadia, I'm not an elite athlete. I'm just a regular guy. So I should be fine, right? No. We all have pelvises. We all have pelvic floors, and they're supposed to function a certain way. And unfortunately, the lifestyles that we live now are not exactly in line with how our body was designed to work. And so I use the example of elite athletes just to show you that it's not really about being older, being frail, being weak. It's really how we function. And so a lot of times where you also see pelvic floor dysfunction in your average person is in guys who are probably doing pretty heavy manual work. So our construction workers, guys that do a lot of heavy lifting, long haul truck drivers, or even our wonderful Amazon Prime drivers and UPS and, guys who are sitting all day driving around cars on bumpy roads. And also for those of us who sit in an office all day as well, our bodies are not designed to be in a sitting position for 8 hours or more. We're really designed to move around and walk and squat. By the way, we lose a lot of function in our hips because we don't really go past or go lower than the level of a chair these days. And even our toilets have come up a little bit higher. And so we lose a lot of range in our hips, and our hips are connected with our pelvic floors. So yeah, this is really for everybody. So I want you guys to really, tune in, listen up, and see where this may apply to you. And if it's still not clear, feel free to reach out to me. I really want to talk to you. I want to share this information because I want all of us to live at our best. So continue on. I had to kind of add this piece in because I realized I didn't want people to walk away thinking I was just talking about athletics. Everyday guys walking around, doing your thing every day, you are also at risk just again because of how our lifestyles are now. Plus another thing that is not even physical relating to pelvic floor is the amount of stress that we carry in our life. Stress also significantly impacts our pelvic floor function. So like I said, there's something for everybody here. So I really want to reach out to you, really want to connect with you, and hope that you find this information helpful. All right, so let's talk about average Joe. So what does pelvic floor dysfunction look like? What does it show up as? And I want to start off with what it's usually misdiagnosed as. So a lot of times in males, when they have some form of dysfunction happening down there, if it's pain related, one of the things that usually gets diagnosed is prostatitis. So prostatitis, the name pretty much basically means inflammation of the prostate. So that could either be some form of inflammation or infection of the prostate. So where prostatitis becomes a misdiagnosis for pelvic floor dysfunction a lot of times is you would go through the course of treatment. So usually they would either give you antibiotics or antivirals to try to decrease the inflammation or the infection. Sometimes they do tests to actually check to see probably what is causing the infection. And I'm saying infection in quotes. And sometimes nothing comes up. There is no evidence of infection, but they still give you the course of treatment anyway. And a lot of times, you go through the course of treatment. Sometimes the symptoms do go away, but then they come back. So the misdiagnosis of prostatitis is commonly seen with pelvic floor pain, pelvic floor dysfunction. And so if you've had the diagnosis of prostatitis, or you've been looking down that line and you've gone through treatment and so forth, and you really haven't gotten any results, it's probably time to talk to somebody who's familiar with pelvic floor dysfunction, who could probably give you another viewpoint and possibly help you to see if pelvic floor dysfunction is really the root cause of your symptoms. Another commonly misdiagnosed condition is hernia. So a lot of times guys might feel pain, strain, heaviness in their lower abdomen, or in their groin area, or in the rectal area, or, within the testicle or penile region, and they feel this heaviness. And sometimes it is diagnosed as a hernia. But again, you go through imaging and you go through testing, and if it's misdiagnosed, they don't find anything. But again, the diagnosis sticks. They go through your, rest and support and all that stuff. They go through those regular treatment regimens, but in the end, your symptoms still persist. And like I said, there's also sometimes a placebo effect, where when you have a pain and you go in and the doctor says, oh, this is what it is. Sometimes just knowing something helps you to feel better. But in this case, where the conditions might be misdiagnosed, you might feel better a little bit, but then the symptoms persist. So those two things are really biggies where misdiagnosis takes place in terms of other conditions being thought of instead of really looking at pelvic floor. Also, you might have things like an enlarged prostate. Again, this is misdiagnosis. So you might be having trouble with urine flow, urine retention and flow. And so they might diagnose this as an enlarged prostate. And also you might go through the treatment for that, but still have issues. And so that can also be pelvic floor. And also in other areas, you have digestive issues and constipation and other bowel dysfunctions. And again, like I said, sometimes these are misdiagnosed, and really what the underlying cause is, it is pelvic floor dysfunction. Now, the greatest symptom that's typically noticed in men when it comes to pelvic floor dysfunction is pain. And yes, guys, I know you're tough and you can take it, but why? If you're in pain, please, I need you guys to go and get checked out, see your provider, see a physical therapist, and hopefully, you do get led to a pelvic floor therapist if needed. But a lot of times pain is the main symptoms that males will experience. And that can be back pain, abdominal pain, groin pain, testicular pain, penile pain, hip pain, tailbone pain, pain with joint movement or joint instability, like you might hear clicking and popping from your hips, from your pelvic bones, and sometimes your spine. And so this instability, sometimes you can have instability without pain, but eventually, if untreated, unmanaged, it can lead to pain. And then the last one, which is a little bit awkward, is sometimes you have pain that is just somewhere down there. It's so deep, you can't even recognize where it's coming from. And so sometimes it's hard to describe. And a lot of times it's ignored because you're like, what am I going to tell them? I can't even identify where this pain is coming from. And so there is a lot of discomfort, especially for men. I mean, we can hardly even get them to go do a regular checkup. So for them to go in and talk about, well, I have a pain somewhere down there, I don't even know where, they're a little bit ticklish about that area. But I promise you, if you follow up and you take care of this, it will make your life so much better. But gentlemen, wait, there is more. And I know you're not going to particularly like this part, but a lot of times also pelvic floor dysfunction can show up in males as pain with intercourse. And that could be during or after intercourse. And sometimes also you can have some forms of erectile dysfunction. The driving force and driving factor could be pelvic floor dysfunction. And so I'm not saying we can cure erectile dysfunction, but if there is a muscular or mechanical component to it where the pelvic floor muscles are weak, because ejaculation or even erection involve the functions of the pelvic floor muscles. And so if they're not in tip-top shape, and they're not going to be able to do their best performance. And so even erectile dysfunction can also be an indicator for pelvic floor dysfunction. The other thing in relation to sexual function, you might find that you have difficulty with ejaculation. And that could be either the inability to ejaculate, difficulty with delayed ejaculation, and of course, premature ejaculation. So all of those functions do depend on the health and function of the pelvic floor muscles and also other biomechanics of your body. And those are things that we addressed in pelvic floor health. And like I say, a little bit of knowledge goes a long way. The more you know, the better off you can be and the happier we can all be. Like I say, quality of life is really important. And I'm saddened that a lot of people don't want to talk about these things, and also they don't seek help for it. And so it really affects their quality of life and their self-esteem and things like that. So I want you to know there is help out there, and these conditions, or like I said, you might be experiencing something and you've gone to a doctor and they say, well, hey, we haven't found anything, so just live with it. You don't have to. Try pelvic floor therapy. Like I said, I do free consultation. So if you are willing, give me a call. I'll put a link down in the description where you can set up a free consultation and we can have a discussion and, hopefully point you in the right direction. So thank you, kind gentlemen, for hearing me out. And I am hopeful that what I have shared, that some of this information can truly be life-changing for you. If you'd like to learn more, like I say, check out the description for a link to set up a free consultation. I have also included a link to one of my favorite men's health YouTube channel. They also have a podcast, and it probably goes by the same name. The channel used to be called Have the Balls to Talk About It, but it looks like they've changed it. I don't know if it's because of YouTube's rule or maybe they just decided to change it. And so now it's called Man Yourself Up with Nick Drossos, Drossos. So his contact is at manyourselfup1. And I'll put that information in the link so you can check it out. I really love them because they're really down to earth guys, and they talk about everything men's health, not just about sex, just everything men's health. And that's really a good way to start getting just general information about men's health. Yeah, men have health challenges too. And like I said, we want everybody to live an optimal life. So why not find out the information you need to live your best life ever? So if you like this content, subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to my YouTube channel, DTPT Wellness. Click the notification button so you can hear the next time when I come out with more content related to men's pelvic health and everyone's pelvic health. But honestly, guys, I am really trying my best to get some content out there for you so that you can be more comfortable and know that whatever you're experiencing you're not alone. That's always the big thing. Everybody thinks it's just me because nobody else talks about it. But it's not just you. There are many people out there who have challenges, and the most important thing is there is actually help for you. So until next time, love yourself, love others, and always bring kindness to the world. Bye-bye.